Okay, hi everyone. This is a quick video, hopefully quick, just to show you how to tidy up your Max for Live patches, make them presentable, and thereby earn extra points. So what I've got here is the demo session, which is Ableton's normal one, but I've added to that a track with a Max instrument, and that Max instrument I've called Simple Saw Synth. You'll notice that you don't really see any interface there. All I've got is a couple of words at the top, which isn't going to be very helpful for your end user. So what we want to do is to put the interface there and make it neat so that it looks good when people come to use it. So I'm going to reopen the patch. Hopefully it will. There we go. So there it is. I'll make it a little bit bigger so that we can see properly. And you can see that I've already done some things in here which will be of benefit to maybe not your end user, but certainly anyone coming to look at your patch later on, like me or Callum. First of all, I've commented the patch. So this is important for any programming that you do, because otherwise you can end up with a load of items in your patch which, if you were to come to it at a later date, would be hard to grasp. It's amazing how quickly you forget your thought processes when you come back to something like this. So you can make a new comment. So when your patch is unlocked, you can either make a new comment by going up here to the balloon, or you can press C and you can write in a comment. Okay, and you should do that for various components of your patch to demonstrate that you know what they mean. That's irrespective of whether you have borrowed code from somewhere else, like a tutorial, for example, or whether you've made it yourself. It's very important that you do that. So I've already done it for some of this. I won't bother doing it for the rest because this is just a demonstration. But you can see that for this component of the patch, which is well, it basically says this part of the patch handles the note information coming from the track. That's the track in Ableton. M2F converts note number to a frequency. This is passed to a sawtooth wave oscillator, as you can see there, and I've named the sawtooth oscillator. And then I've said what the multiplication object does as well. So it would be helpful if you can produce that. This is distinct, these commenting, which is not viewable to your end user, is distinct from the labeling of various controls that you might have. So I've labeled the actual plugin here. I called it Simple Synthesizer. We might want to make that bigger. You'll know hopefully that if you click on an object and you click the I button down here, then you will come up with a bunch of stuff that you can change for that particular object. Here I'm going to change the font size to make it a little bit bigger, so that it's a little bit easier to see the name of the instrument that you've made. It's not critical, but it's useful. And then we've got down here ADSR envelope, because that's what this component of the patch is, and then the output volume here, which is what this component of the patch is. Okay, so far so good, but none of it yet is visible to our end user. Even if I save this patch here, you can see down here that the name changes to be that bigger font, but that's it. So what we want to do is to put all of this stuff that we actually want your end user to see into what's called presentation mode. And the presentation mode is accessible using this easel down here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose all the components of the patch that I actually want my end user to see. So click on that, and I'm going to right click and go to add to presentation. Okay, when I do that, you can see the little pretty pink glow appears around it. I'm going to do that for all the components that I want to add to presentation. And by the way, there is a quick key for that, which is Command P. So all of those, oops, didn't work. Sorry, Command Shift P, I think. There we go. Right, so we've done that. Now what we can do is to go into presentation mode, and those things are there, they're visible. So what we're going to do is move those things to a portion of the screen where we need them. So there they are. Actually, there's something I haven't done yet, I've realised, which I had specifically left undone for the purposes of this tutorial. And I'll come back to that in a minute. So here we've got the ADSR envelope, which is here. And I'm going to change this live gain so that it is horizontal. So I can go again to its inspector window, go to horizontal, and it comes to a horizontal mode. I'm going to put that to output volume. So we now have an envelope control here, and then we've got the live game with the output volume here. Again, I can save this. Nothing happens to our original display down here. That's because I need to have the patch open in presentation mode. Okay, so by default it opens in patching mode, which is the patch display that you saw before. We want it to open in presentation mode, and to do that, it's a little bit of an odd sequence, but so follow this carefully. You click outside anything on your screen. Okay, so click somewhere in the patch that's so that nothing is selected, and you'll see that the inspector window goes blank. Then you go to this little P button at the top, which says Show Patch Inspector. Okay, so we have an inspector window that is not for any particular object, it is for the whole patch, and that's what we're looking for. So once you've got that up, you scroll down, and you may have more or less entries in this, depending on whether you've got one of these tabs selected. So I'm going to, at the moment it's on all, which is why I've got all of them visible. So I scroll down to Open in Presentation. I click on that, and what you'll first see happen is that a line appears at the bottom here. That denotes that it's going to open in presentation mode. It also shows the area that is going to be visible within your plugin. So it's a very helpful guide as to how to lay out your stuff on the screen here. Once you've done that, again, if we go back to, I'm going to make this smaller so we can see, and I save this, you will immediately see, so I'm just pressing Command S, you'll see that all of that stuff now appears as a plugin in here. It also changes the size of the plugin so that it is an appropriate length for the stuff we've got in the window. The reason why it hasn't gone all the way is because, because these comment boxes are quite big. So if I make those smaller and save again, we'll see that this goes back to a better size. So that's basically it for presentation mode. The one thing I have forgotten to do, which I'll show you very quickly here, is in the actually I'll go back to non-presentation mode. Open this out again. Is the dials. So some of these I've already labelled, and again we've got labels for the overall section here, ADSR envelope and output envelope, but we can also put labels on the dials or the controls themselves. So what I'll do is click on the one that I haven't yet done. This is the sustain value. Now attack and decay, those are always going to be values in milliseconds, so they're going to be whole numbers. The sustain control is, well, first of all we want to label that control. So we go to here, the long name, change that to sustain. Whoops. And same one down here. And you notice that as soon as I do that, it goes hashed. This means that it's in the process of being edited, and we'll see that update properly when we save the patch. What else can we change in here? Ah, yes, the unit style. Well, while attack and decay are going to be whole numbers, so they're ints in unit style, we want sustain to be a floating point because it's a percentage, if you like, or a ratio of the incoming velocity. So I changed that to a float. And I'm also going to choose to give it an initial value. So by default, this is currently defaulting to 0, but I'm going to give it an initial value of let's say 0.8. Okay, again, this won't update yet, but you'll see what's happened in a bit. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing for the release component. So I open the inspector for that, go down to here and choose release and release. As for why you have to put it in both long name and short name, we won't go into, but you should anyway. And then we can leave the unit style on int because again this is milliseconds, which is going to be whole milliseconds. So we don't need to change that, but again I will put in an initial value, so initial enable. And then we'll put in an initial value of how long would we want our release to be? Maybe, oh, sorry, one thing I haven't changed is the range of that, which would need to be between 0 and, I don't know how long, is the maximum release time we would want, which is probably going to be maybe 2000 milliseconds. but we will put in an initial value of 1000. Okay, so just to clarify, things you need to change are long name, short name, range. Make sure that that's an appropriate range for the dial that you want to make. Change the unit style to an appropriate one, and then do initial enable and put in an initial value. So I think that's okay for this particular dial. The one thing I forgot to do, going back to sustain, we want to change the range, which I didn't change, to a range between 0 and 1. So here, again, we've got sustain. The range will be from 0 to 1, but it has to be a float because we want values between 0 and 1, and then I've got initial value there as well. So it was a little bit long-winded, but hopefully you followed it. Okay, now I save the patch. So again, Command Save or Command S, and these have now all been initialized. If you'll notice that the dials haven't actually changed, but if I were to lock the patch and double click on any of them, they will go to the default values that I have set. So if you remember, the sustain value was 0.8, double click on that, it goes to 0.8, double click on the release, it goes to 1000, which is the value that I set. On attack decay, I set them to 20 and 40 respectively. The one I haven't done is live gain. We'll leave the default value on that to at 0 dB, which is what it does anyway. And I just need to change the label on here to, I'll just put in gain. Save that. Okay, I think that's it now. So if we go to presentation mode, we should see things as we want them to be. I'm sure you can make yours prettier than this. You can also add colours if you want to. You'll find the colours in the inspector window. I won't go through that now because it's pretty obvious. I hope that's helpful. I think that's all I wanted to say. We can close this now, and we now have a decent looking plugin in your live display, which is ready for submission.